So today we're going to talk about how to define the foundation you're going to use when you transition out of the military service. Establishing your foundation is going to help guide you when you're looking for a job and to help you determine what company you are willing to work for once you transition out of the service. First thing you're going to do is look at your core values. Core values are based on your family experience before you went in the service, your faith, your experience while in the military, and this becomes your guiding light. Everything will come back to your core values. So when you're evaluating the company, when you're evaluating the manager, you're going to look at that person to determine, do they have core values that you can align with? The next thing we're going to look at is how to define those values. What we do is, what has been your greatest achievement throughout the military, before the military, during the military? What has been your greatest achievement, whether it be military or some type of experience you had while working for the military, either outside of the military as a volunteer, or working for another group, or working for another business while in the service or before the service? What has been your greatest achievement? What rules are followed in your organization? Because when you come out of the service, and I can tell you, timeliness is very important. What do I mean by that? We are trained to be 15 minutes early to everything. But in the civilian world, that's not necessarily the case. And that's something that is a shock for a lot of us when we come out and we show up 15 minutes early and everyone else is showing up, right on time or a little bit late. And you're like, what's going on here? So you want to see if that value still aligns. What are you most proud of? What do you see yourself when you're most proud? And what makes you as a professional most satisfied? As a professional, you don't have to define it so much as a military vocabulary, but what is it that you find satisfactory? Is it when you're able to take a team and accomplish a mission? Well, you need to be able to explain that in civilian terms. I'm able to take a team and get the job done, and so that they understand. How do you want people to feel when they work with you? Now, understand that how they feel about you is also how they value you. And if you come out of the service and saying, I've been in the military for 20 years or 10 years or even 4 years, and this is how we're going to do business, understand that civilians don't have to take orders, and they're not necessarily willingly going to do anything you ask them to do. So you want to say, how do you feel about you, right? I want to feel confident. I want them to see that I can get the job done. I want them to see me as a reliable person. How do you want them to feel about you? And then, what is most important for you? What is absolutely most important that you define as important? Because this is going to help you understand what your foundation and your core values are, so that when you evaluate a company, and more importantly, a manager you work for at that company, do their values align with yours? What's your experience, and how do people see it as value when they come out of the service? What I can tell you from my own experience is that when I came out of the service, I had a bachelor's degree, a master's degree in business, a doctorate in business, and I thought those educational civilian qualifications and education would help translate my military experience. But what I found was they didn't necessarily see it the same way. My perception was my military experience was highly valuable and could get most anything done. The reality was that that didn't translate into dollars, because when you're hired, they're paying you a salary and they're expecting a return on that investment as quickly as possible. So the amount of time it takes to train you, amount of time it takes to show you the culture and for you to adapt into that new culture and then actually start producing value is going to take time. So your perception on what you think you're worth versus what they see you're really worth is going to be different. And you want to understand the reality of that situation. So how do you do that? The way you do that is ask somebody who has been a veteran and came out and transitioned into the civilian workforce, or just be blunt when you're getting the hiring manager. It's like, what should I expect when I'm coming out of the service? How do you see me transitioning into your organization, and how do you expect that value to translate as quickly as possible? And they should be able to give you a plan, because they say, well, I'm just going to hire you and we'll figure it out. That's not fair to you or them, because there's no defined timeline, which we'll talk about in the next segment, where we actually identify a goal. Okay, what is the reality of your military experience. Why do leaders choose you? And this is something you can look at right now. What I mean by that is that you're in the service and you are selected to be on certain teams. Leaders reach out to you to get things done. This is becoming your unique value proposition. What does that look like? How do you solve problems? Well, he always gets the job done. Well, specifically, how does he get the job done? He's able to analyze the situation. He's able to evaluate his team members to see what they can get done. He knows to inventory his assets, which we'll talk about a little bit later. How do you solve problems? What are the benefits of your service? Why would someone pick you over someone else? Are you the go-to person that solves problems? Are you the one that's most detailed? Or are you the one that's most driven to get the job done? Two different personalities required for two different types of job. If I'm preparing for an inspection, I need that detailed person that can get down into the details, right? Or if I have to get the mission done, then I'm going to get that person that can drive to get the job done. So how do they benefit from your service? And what sets you apart? Going back to my original question, why do people choose you? In a way that people understand it. A single phrase, I am reliable and get the job done. So what? Everybody's reliable and gets the job done. I'm not going to hire you. What makes you reliable? Well, I'm reliable because I show up. That's big, believe it or not. That's big. I show up on time, even bigger, right? And when I get there, I understand the situation quickly. I analyze it using these factors, and I quickly get the job done, right? Short and concise. I'm reliable because dot dot dot. Clear and specific. Use industry words. In other words, the words that civilians use to get the job done. And this becomes your theme. Your theme. I am the leader that gets the job done because I'm able to analyze a situation and measure the results. Okay, what type of situation? You know your expertise, right? And so you want to understand that. That's one of the reasons you want to get a civilian certification, so you understand the vocabulary and terminology used in the civilian world. Your military certification is true, everyone knows, from basic training all the way up. They know how to work with you. Everyone has the same common terminology. When you go from basic training to a job, they know what you know, and then they train you in a new job. And then when you take that job and go in any unit in the service, they know what you know because they were trained. Well, that's what comes with a civilian certification, one that's accepted in your industry. Test your values. Military versus civilians. How do you do that? Talk to people. People in your church, people at a coffee shop, anywhere. Just talk to them about what you do and say, well, how do you see that? What do you see in the world? Truly understand how a civilian sees the world and how you align with that vision. How do we translate their words into our experiences? Family versus self. How do you see things? Ask your mom, your dad, ask your spouse, ask your kids, ask your friends. Ask your brothers and sisters, and how do you see yourself? What do they see? What's best about you? What do they see? And why would they talk with you? You may have a sibling that's in the civilian workforce, and they can explain it to you. Hopefully, if they're honest, they'll be able to explain that to you. All right. Now we want to inventory our assets. What do I mean by inventory assets? Our intellectual assets. What can we do? I am trustworthy, reliable, analytical, problem solver. Put me in any situation, I can analyze it to the root cause, the root issue that needs to get solved, and I can get right to it. Specifically, I did it, boom. When exactly did you do it? You may have education papers that you wrote while earning your degree, or something you've written. Those are assets. All of those are assets. You want to identify what your skills are. Those are your military skills. Translate those military skills into civilian words. Those are also assets. And be careful of the intangibles that they fill your head with when you're in the military. They're like, well, you have leadership skills and you're reliable, but how does that translate into value? Right? How does that translate into value? What are your skills? Your MOS skills, your intangibles, those are important, but then how do they equal value? Your experiences. This demonstrates your skills, right? And you, again, using industry civilian terminology. What is your experience? Your education. There's another asset that you have, not just civilian bachelor's degree or your military certifications, you need civilian certifications that people understand. And you can get that through the Army Ignited program, the credentialing assistance. Then what is the value to the business? And this is key. You need to be able to explain your value to the business in terms of dollars. And they should share with you the same. In other words, when they hire you, they're going to hire you for a specific job. They need to outline what that job is. What are your duties and responsibilities? How long do you expect me to work before I am proficient and efficient at getting this job done? What training are you going to provide? What bosses or managers or mentors are going to be the ones that train me to do this, right? If they're just going to put you in a job and say good luck and not give you any training, not that it's a bad opportunity, right? It just expectations are going to be different. What I can tell you is when they hire you, they expect you to turn around and produce results as quickly as possible. In the military, we train you as quickly as possible. In the civilian world, they want you to just get it done. So ask those questions. The interview is a two-way street. It's not just you asking questions or them asking questions of you. It's you asking questions for them. Because you don't want to get hired into a job and get started and then they didn't train you, or your experiences don't align with what they expected, or they just don't have an overall plan. And we'll talk about it differently when we start to evaluate the companies. We'll talk about those. What's your ideal job? The company. Do you have an ideal company you want to work for? Nike, Boeing, Northrop Grumman. Think of any Starbucks. Okay, all these are different companies. Is that a company that you want to work for? But why? Why would you want to work for those companies? Do their values align? Do you need to live closer to home? Have you been traveling for the last 4 to 20 years and you've never been close to home? So you like make that decision. That was one of our decisions when we transitioned. Like, we're going to live here. And then it was really the jobs that were required in those spots. Your position. This is where we need to translate our military experiences into civilian expectations. You're in the military, you're a sergeant, a first sergeant, a master sergeant, a lieutenant, captain, major, colonel, whatever it is. You have a lot of value in the military because you've worked your way up through the ranks. But in the civilian world, they don't translate those experiences into their value. So what position should you expect? And then how are you going to work your way up the chain? And then salary. You have your desired salary versus your required salary. Okay, the required salary is the salary you need to make to pay your bills, your rent, insurance, all those things that you're required to pay. That's a required salary. And then your desired salary. This is another area where the military kind of gets themselves in trouble. Okay, this is where your desired may not actually equal civilian value. Another experience that I had is like I was expecting to earn all this money, but in reality, in the civilian world, I was only worth this much because they didn't understand my experience. I haven't proven myself in the civilian world. They didn't see that value. So my desired salary versus my required salary were different. Okay, so that was a difference in what we were doing. Identify your best company. How do you do that? This is going to become your new team. So just like you build a team in the service where you're assigned people and you got to make them work together, now you get to actually choose what kind of team you're going to work with. The people. So when you're going through that interview process, asking the questions, evaluating the people interviewing you on the other side. Do they align with your core values, which we've already talked about? Okay, those core values you're bringing with you out of the military. You're bringing those things out, and does this company align with that? And it's important to understand that. The leaders who are loyal to your leadership currently. What, when your leaders pick you to lead a team or to get a job done, why? Why is that? Because you're going to translate those leaders into new leaders. Who are those leaders? Do they align with that experience? People who are easier, fun to work with. Are you a good person or a fun person to work with? Or are you more of a hard charger, get the job done? Understand that, again, going through the interview process, talking to people. How do you like working here? What do you do for fun? Does that align with your idea of fun? Why do you get satisfaction helping people get the job done? Where do they see your value to other members of your organization? In other words, leaders and team leaders pick you, team members follow you. Why is that? Why do they see you as valuable? And then Who promised future value that benefits you? Okay. How do they value your leadership and how does that benefit you? So we want to look at those things. When you're looking at your new team, you want to evaluate all these different factors. Okay. This is your best company and this becomes your goal, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Identify your new team. Why do people work with you? And this, what I'm telling you here is how to translate your current experiences to meet those needs. Now, what is a DISC assessment? A DISC assessment is a personality profile. You may have opportunity to take one. We have an opportunity to go ahead and take a link. Look at the link down below. You can go ahead and click, take the DISC assessment. And then from there, it kind of gives you an idea of how your personality is here and how it will actually reflect out there. That'll be a different conversation. Actually, you can go to a video, click up above over here in the video, and they'll explain the DISC assessment and how it's valuable to you. It's one of the things you get when you go through our training course, CPSM certification training. You get a DISC assessment. So keep that in mind. So what should you do right now? Go ahead and download the transition guide and list out your core values. List out your core values, post them, fill in the transition planner, okay? Do your asset inventory. What skills do you have? What paperwork do you have? Papers, articles you've written that you can now post on LinkedIn and other professional sites to demonstrate your skills. What's the value of those assets in the civilian world? And if you go to SupplyChainManagement.Jobs, you can actually go in and look at a career assessment and look at the jobs you want and kind of see the current salaries available for those jobs, the best companies you want to work for, and really identify why leaders choose you, because that's going to be one of the key questions you're going to be answering during the interview process. You'll be asking, people will ask, hey, what really makes you valuable? Why should I choose you over anyone else? And then you explain, well, when I'm chosen to lead a team, it's because I dot 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 dot, right? I quickly assess the situation because I've been trained to identify these key factors, and when I see those factors, I know to make these decisions. Okay, what it's showing there is proficiency, that you're able to understand a situation, identify a situation, and move forward. Does all this make sense? Okay, so this is important. Appreciate you being and watching this video as a member of SupplyChainManagement.Jobs YouTube channel. Get access to this videos, and we're going to be doing a few more, so make sure you take a look at those. And it's important to transition properly and to have a good mindset, because when you transition, especially in the economy as it's coming up, it's very difficult because you're getting pushed out of the military. Your contract up, you are moving on. Whether you like it or not, you are moving on, and you're going right into the civilian workforce wherever you can find a job, at home. And you really need to gauge your expectations and what's available. That will help you transition correctly, fairly, and in a way that's not going to get you in a lot of trouble. And your mindset's going to be key. And this foundation that we've just talked about is going to help you. So if you have any comments, please post them below. Love to talk with you. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Send me a message. Be happy to share with you my thoughts on where you're headed and how to translate your skills into the civilian world. And we'll talk to you soon.